So, kicking us off in the portal, we now have something very exciting for DBT Core, and that is state-aware orchestration. So what state-aware orchestration is a way to easily process data using DBT as soon as it actually lands. So we've also got this brand new doc site, which even has AI, so you can even ask stuff with AI here, which is really nice. But essentially with state-aware orchestration, instead of tagging all of your DBT models and then having to manually maintain those tags, what you can do is you can simply define a sort of freshness configuration on a downstream model. So for example, let's say you wanted to say, I want my final model to get updated every hour, then everything upstream of it would also then get updated every hour. And then all you have to do is define something like that. So making it very easy for people to schedule and do orchestration in DBT, very good fit if you're like multi-tenant and multi-team and you have some people that just work in the warehouse and they don't own everything end to end. But there is another very powerful feature, which is that it doesn't run any data on a model if there is no new data. So let's say there's a base table like orders and there's no new data in it. What that means is Orchestra won't run this stage orders model. It will just skip it. And the cool thing is sort of having it in Orchestra is really, really easy. All you have to do is take your existing DBT task and do this toggle. So one line of code. And we've got a ton of really cool stuff in the lineage too. So you'll see that we are actually getting a ton of extra, extra logging and extra debugging here, which is pretty cool. But then when it comes to the actual like underlying lineage, we can go ahead and see that we've got a ton of reused nodes. So Orchestra is going to provide a very helpful description to tell you exactly why it's been reused, which is pretty cool. And what this means is like faster DBT runs fundamentally because you're not running as much stuff. And then also lower costs because you're not sending as many queries to the database. I'll take questions at the end just because I'm sharing entire screen because I want to show some like alert stuff that's not in this window. But yeah, if you guys have questions, please dump them in the chat. There are a couple of other like cool things here. So you can now like run a single model from sort of like the inside DBT DAG. So not just like running like an entire task, but also the ability to sort of like trigger an individual model, which is pretty nice. But yeah, this is state-aware orchestration. So really, really, really powerful feature. Currently available in Orchestra and one other SaaS tool. So yeah, pretty unique, and we're very excited about this. Cool. So what else do I want to talk through? We have been improving the metadata that we show in Orchestra as well. So if you head to the Assets tab on the left-hand side, for anybody that's not seen this, this is basically a sort of like data people-focused catalog of all of your data assets. Unlike traditional catalog, it doesn't require you to set anything up. It just gets populated automatically. You'll see that we now have some additional information around things like test operations, the number of assets, and we're going to have a few more graphs under here. What's quite nice about it is if we take one of the, I've lost my DAG, but if we take one of the models that we had before, so let's take one of these skipped ones like staging sources. you'll see that we've got like a little bit more information here at the bottom on why these sorts of tables are being reused or why they're running. We've also added in things like the sort of model configuration from DBT. So if you want to see like what tests are configured and how this model is basically being defined, it's all in here. The other pretty cool thing is we have added filtering to the lineage. So now if you kind of want to explore like a global lineage of everything in your data estate, you will be able to do that. And it's pretty cool because we're trying to basically bring in downstream assets like dashboards into this too. So again, like there are lots of new, you can construct a lineage by taking metadata from different places and sending it to something via open lineage, but it's quite a lot of work and it is quite hard. Everything in Orchestra is sort of like, it's just coming out without you having to do anything. Cool. So that is some of the state-aware orchestration pieces and then also some of the lineage. We also have a very exciting new task, which is a human-in-the-loop task. And I'm going to go through a couple of examples there. So we can build that now. So let's say you have a full refresh job. That could be something like a, like a very expensive, stored procedure. So maybe like executing a task. Or in DBT, it could be something like an expensive refresh. You might not want anybody to be able to run this. So what you can now do in Orchestra is you can have an approval workflow. And it's pretty cool because you can say things like, this is going to be really expensive. So double check it. You can have any sort of list of approvals or approvers here. And if you want to send this to like Slack, you can do that too. "42 lines of code." And yeah, like if we run this, you'll see now I have the chance to approve this. But also if I head to alert testing, I've got this sort of pipeline alert that's come through. And then this takes me to the same place. So this is expensive, I'm going to deny it. And now everything's going to get cancelled. So I think that's one pretty cool use case. Another one you might want to do is if you have sort of like an AI task. So something we built recently was the ability to call Claude as well. So in addition to things like OpenAI. But I don't know, let's say you have some data that lives in your data warehouse. Could be something like a list of people that have signed up in the last, like, I don't know, 15 minutes or hour. So what we're going to do is we're going to select, data from signups. You can sort of like pass these outputs through in an almost like NAN style way. So let's say we wanted to come up with some marketing content for these people and then sort of like forward them on to somewhere. You could say, let's email the signups. And then what we're going to do is we can actually like, pass the values of what we did before into this prompt. So if I go to set outputs, and then we're going to get previous task runs. instead of sort of having this approval step, you could then have something where you're like, I don't know, doing like a Python job or like a HTTP call, basically like pushing that like automation that you've used AI to do into some place. But what you might want to do is you might want to sort of see what that is and then sort of look to approve it as well. So you could basically pass what you've generated in a similar way here. Right, it's not necessarily expensive, but it could be important. You don't want to send something to a sort of user that, you know, is completely offbeat, right? You might want to check it first. And that way you can sort of start to do these automations with these approval steps, which I think is pretty cool. Cool. They are the main things. The other thing I wanted to run through was workspaces. So often, like, people start out building their data stacks with sort of like legacy orchestrator, like, you know, Apache Airflow. And while that works great when you're one team, it can get a little bit complicated when you have multiple teams. You could put every single team's stuff like on the same workspace, but then if I'm in a different team to you, my stuff, if it goes on for too long, it can impact your stuff. So that's undesirable. One solution is to maintain multiple instances of Airflow, which means multiple clusters, which means you're paying twice for everything. And that's fine, but then obviously you have to manage all of that, which is annoying. So now in Orchestra, we have workspaces. So I'm going to create a workspace for our marketing team so they can do some of those automations that I just showed you. But I don't really want to, like, you know, I don't really want them to have access to my stuff. So what I've done is I've created them a workspace. And then if you imagine that, you know, I'm sort of somebody in the marketing team, I can then come up with like my marketing workflow. You know, I don't have AI in this workspace, but that's okay. I'm just going to do a really basic approval task. But, you know, this allows you to essentially onboard multiple teams to give them their own like little workspace where they only have access to, you know, their own analytics, their own integrations, their own environments. So you can sort of make sure nobody has access to anything they're not meant to, but equally have still full scalability and full control over exactly everything they're doing. The key here is that like all of the metadata from your workspace, but also from other teams' workspaces, like it's all going to be, you know, captured in the same way. The analytics is going to look exactly the same. And all of this is available by API. So sort of trying to abstract some of that observability and governance while still giving people the flexibility to, like, you know, deploy things in a serverless way. But yeah, we've absolutely flown through that. So I'm gonna stop presenting and yeah, take a look at some questions.